Buckle up, Buttercup. We're heading into the final week of trading in April, and it's gonna be a pivotal one. Now, when I say that, what I really mean is we're about to find out, is the recent upward price action a fake out breakout, or is it the start of a legitimate bull rally? In this video, I'll be breaking it all down. All the major macroeconomic events you got to be paying attention to, the hot news, the stats, facts, and figures of seasonality, and I even want to get into some individual equity talk because we're seeing certain tickers such as Tesla and MSTR rip to the high heavens. So as you can imagine, we have a lot to get into, but before we do that, if you enjoy these type of breakdowns, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good jazz. It really does help me out, so I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that being said, let's rock. When the world's largest casino officially closed its doors on Friday to give us a break for the weekend, here was the headline. S&P 500, NASDAQ closed higher for the third straight day, fueled by tech gains. Yes, tech is ripping, crypto's looking pretty good as well, but specifically semiconductors, all those fancy processing chips, and we actually have a little extra news there over the weekend coming out from Huawei. But anyway, yes, tech is leading the entire market higher and higher and higher. Now, I'm a true believer to have a better idea of where we're going, the highest probability pathway, you have to have a better understanding of where we're coming from. And really what I'm referring to is not only just the price action and the news developments, but I'm talking about all that gnarly, hot political drama, because right now it doesn't really take a genius to figure out that this market is moving on headlines. So we kind of got to have a better understanding of what happened last week to have a better prediction of what's going to be happening this upcoming week. Now, as you could see on Friday, we did conclude the week very strong. Granted, in the morning until about 10:30, things were a little bit suspect, but then we popped the SPY, putting a nice 0.7% gain to close out the week. The NASDAQ up 1.1, Tesla a sky high 9.8. Look at this, trading at 285, and then MSTR a nice 5% gain. And actually, as I'm filming this, Bitcoin is just below 94,000. And yes, these are more of the tech names, but the overall heat map of the S&P 500 decently green. As you can see, it is clearly tech led. I mean, we have other sectors, kind of this inverse L here, a little bit weaker, but overall the bulls are dominating, and you can see that in the S&P 500. Finally, we got the breakout and the close above the high from Wednesday the 9th. This is a key day. That's that historic gain day from the Trump announcements with China and the rest of the world and the 90-day pause, all that good jazz. Anyway, we ripped. And then for many days, the better part of 2.5 weeks, we could not get anywhere. But now look at it. Not only did we get the break, we got the continuation. And for those of you who are more of the shorter term traders, obviously pay attention to the upside gap fill at 5572. That is the low from Wednesday, April 2nd. That is a very easy and evident target. Obviously, if you need the SPY equivalent, that would be around 554.81. So please pay attention to that for those of you in the short term. I should also note that for those of you trading in the shorter term duration, what we are seeing in the options market is very constructive. It is very bullish. So granted, if you're looking at the monthlies and the quarterlies, the big ones where institutions are at, they're still technically put dominated, but it's weakening as more calls are coming in. But what's really interesting is in the short term, as in the 0 DTs for every individual day of the week, for about the next 3 weeks, they have gone from being put dominated to call dominated, which is why I'm exactly calling it constructive. So when we see optimism in the options market, evident technical levels to the upside, those upside gap fills, and general optimism from the political events, it tells me that in the short term right now, the bulls are in control. So not only do we clearly have some nice upward momentum, but we're really getting ourselves out of the hole that we recently got ourselves into. The S&P 500 recovers half of its tariff decline. What will it take to make it all the way back? Well, I know the answer to that. We need to come to some trade agreements and remove all the uncertainty and volatility and just pure chaos from the system. And when things calm down, I think that is that time where we can create the nice price foundation and then bounce off of it. To be fair, that is much easier said than done, because the most recent bachelor-esque drama between Trump and Xi and the US and China, it is at new levels where we are getting a lot of conflicting news. Just in case you miss it, let me give you this recap. China says it is not having any talks with the US and the US should stop creating confusion. They responded to this after Trump, the administration, and the White House press secretary all said that we are talking. talking. So basically, the US said, yes, we are talking, we are making progress. China came back and said, we are not talking. And then, as you might surprise, the US came back again and said, yes, we are talking. Now, this might shock you, but I'm not in the position to know who's telling the truth and who's telling a little bit of a fib. But what I can tell you is even though the US says we're talking and China says we're not talking, we did just get this update from China. China's considering suspending its 125% tariffs on some US goods. So both sides are kind of like awkwardly, gingerly kind of saying, hey, here's a little bit of an olive branch. But in terms of this whole we are talking versus we aren't talking, I'm not necessarily fully understanding that game theory. According to Trump, he's spoken to Xi many times, but doesn't also necessarily want to comment on it. President Trump says he spoke with China's President Xi. He also says the US is very close to a trade deal with Japan. I think the second sentence is actually pretty important because do not forget, there's almost 200 other countries who are right now trying to get trade deals, and we are seeing progress with the likes of India, Japan, Vietnam, a little bit of the EU. So yes, obviously the big story is China, but if we get this other news of a deal struck with Japan or any of the other ones I just listed, that's going to clearly be good for the market. And last but not least, we got this update from Trump to effectively conclude the trading week. From Trump, trade deals expected in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and that was reported by Time. So like I said, are we going to hold them exactly to that timeline? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of uncertainty, but it's maybe just a bit of a time frame to potentially be basing your trades off of. And fortunately, that brings us to this weekend, getting ready for the upcoming week. As I was sitting down to prepare for this video, we actually got another update from Trump on Truth Social. When tariff cuts in many people, income taxes will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated. Focus will be on people making less than $200,000 a year. Also, massive numbers of jobs are already being created. With new plants and factories currently being built or planned, it will be a bonanza for America. The External Revenue Service is happening. Now, will it actually is a completely different question, but I have to admit, does sound interesting. On top of all that, we also heard from the Treasury Secretary this morning. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says trade talks are progressing positively, particularly with Asia. Important note here, this marks the third Sunday in a row with similar statements. I think this could be interpreted in two separate ways. One is, hey, yeah, we're actually making progress and things are going along somewhat as planned. Or the other one is, hey, we have to kind of create this overall story, this narrative to keep people calm because obviously we just see volatility being so extremely high. Speaking of volatility being extremely high, don't forget, as we have all this insanity going on in the world of global markets, there is also issues in global tensions, and I'm specifically talking about what in the world is going on with Russia and Ukraine. So we know with the Pope's funeral, there was all these world leaders meeting, and we got this, what's going to be clearly an iconic photo between Trump and Zelensky, clearly talking about what's going on with the ceasefire. Trump floats tougher Russia sanctions, meets Zelensky for the first time since Oval Office blow-up. The U.S. President Donald Trump questioned whether Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to, quote-unquote, stop the war with Ukraine. The White House said that Trump and Zelensky had a very productive discussion. Trump said Friday that Russia and Ukraine are very close to a deal. On another note, but still with respect to just global conflict, Iran says extremely cautious on success of nuclear talks with the U.S. The negotiations are extremely serious and technical. There are still differences both on major issues and on details. U.S. President Donald Trump had signaled confidence in clinching a new pact with the Islamic Republic that would block Tehran's path to a nuclear bomb. Now, I get it. You don't really come here for political talk and all of this stuff, but it really is important. This type of stuff, either blowing out of proportion and getting more hectic, clearly could have a negative impact on the market. And one evident thing is just something like oil, especially if you're an energy trader. On the other side, if deals are made and tensions simmer down, that could obviously be very good for the market. So I'm not just covering this to cover it. As an active trader, as an investor, these are the types of stories you clearly have to pay attention to because they are very important narratives. So everything I just covered is the backdrop of what you need to know going into the final week of trading of April. So let's get a better plan of what might or might not be happening. First of all, as I always do on these Sunday update videos, getting ready for the upcoming week, we got to talk about the stats, facts, and figures of seasonality. Over the past 3 decades, you can see there is a bullish seasonal push into the end of April, a little bit of a hiccup in May in a general sense. But right here, I'm kind of focusing on this final portion. Like I said, this is on the past 30 years. Now, if we focus on the past 5 years, you can see that April as a whole is a bullish month. And then if we look at the weekly, the next 2 upcoming weeks do favor the bulls, but it's not like a standout week. So I would say from a seasonality standpoint, the bulls have a slight edge, but it's nothing, I guess, record-breaking, if that makes sense. I should also clarify that I'll be the first to admit in this type of an environment where we're so headline-driven and just tweet and update and interview-driven, I don't care as much about seasonality. I care a lot more about what the actual updates are, which is exactly why you should be paying attention to all the major macroeconomic events. Monday is a little bit quiet, but by the time we get to Tuesday, we had the JOLTS job openings and the consumer confidence numbers. On Wednesday, we get GDP, PCE, very important inflation report, and the ADP non-farm employment change. Thursday, the normal initial jobless claims. And then on Friday, it's the first Friday of a new calendar month, so we're going to be getting the unemployment report. I should also note that we have a lot of major earnings reports coming down the pipeline. So on Monday, MGM, Domino's, Waste Management. On Tuesday, SoFi, PayPal, UPS, JetBlue, Coca-Cola, Pfizer, Visa, Starbucks, Snapchat. Wednesday, Caterpillar, and then this is where the major tech names come in. If you own these or are trading them, you gotta know these dates. Microsoft, Meta, Robinhood, Qualcomm, all on Wednesday. On Thursday, we got some of the big boys, Amazon, Apple, and then in there we also have Riot, Airbnb, Reddit, McDonald's, Roblox, CVS, and then to conclude the week, some energy plays like Chevron, and then Fubo TV and ExxonMobil. So paying attention to those. But clearly, we are going to be hearing from some of the, like literally the top 1 and 2 biggest companies in the entire world as of the point that I'm filming this. And that's coming off the fact that we got some interesting news related to semiconductors over the weekend. And I say it's interesting because it's semiconductors that led the entire market higher for the most recent week. But check this out. China's Huawei develops new AI chip seeking to match NVIDIA. Remember, right now, there's a lot of awkwardness between the US and China and what chips are we going to send them, who NVIDIA potentially taking a $5.5 billion hit if we cut off the H200. Huawei trying to step in and saying, don't worry about it. We can kind of cover that hole. This is very, very interesting. Huawei Technologies is gearing up to test its newest and most powerful AI processor, which the company hopes could replace some of the higher end products of the US chip giant NVIDIA. Huawei has approached some Chinese tech companies about testing the technical feasibility of the new chip called the Ascend. The company is slated to receive the first batch of samples of the processor as soon as late May, so roughly a month from the point that I'm filming this. The development is still at an early age, and a series of tests would be needed to assess the chip's performance and get it ready for customers. So we're kind of getting there, but it's not really ready to rip it at this moment. So in terms of an impact on NVIDIA, I would say, yeah, maybe these headlines have a bit of a downward pressure, if you will, but it's not a sealed deal by any means. Huawei hopes that the latest iteration of the Ascend AI processors will be more powerful than NVIDIA's H100. We'll find out. NVIDIA is very much the golden child for a reason within this industry. Maybe they can pull it off, but I think it's one of those things that kind of guilty until proven innocent. I very much want to see it and not just go off of these headlines. NVIDIA as a stock has not been performing so well in the year 2025. We have lower highs, we have lower lows, but recently we might be seeing this first higher low, a potential breakout of this EMA cloud. I'd be looking for it to clear 115, and then from there in the short term, I want to see how it reacts to about 125. And just because we're here talking about tickers that look like they might have bottom, I gotta bring up Tesla because it is looking phenomenal. Looks like we have a triple bottom, slightly higher low, breakout of the EMA cloud, nice recent gain of 9.8%, basically bouncing off of 223, already at 284, gaining about $60. Doesn't look like it wants to slow down. That's nice technical breakout. A push and a close above 292 would set up an evident test of 300, and then from there, we might be talking the mid 300s. So obviously, if you're a Tesla fan, congrats to you. If you're an investor, a trader, I hope you're making a buttload of money. But there's another one that's looking also very, very strong. Look at MicroStrategy. Not long ago, trading at 237, ripping to 368. What in the world? This thing, what percentage gain was that? It is now up 55% in 17 days. 2.5 trading weeks. This thing has gained 55%, way above the cloud. Nice technical breakout. Obviously, it's riding with Bitcoin just because Bitcoin going from 74 up to 94, but this one absolutely crushing it. So for those of you who are crypto fans or just looking for something that has a nice, strong trend, higher volatility, that if you can get on the right side of it, you can make a good amount of money, I would definitely say you got to put this one on your watch list. But with that being said, I would love to hear from you. Please, in a comment below, if you had to pick one ticker that you're going to be watching, no matter what happens, what do you think is the most exciting opportunity in the market right now? I would love to hear from you in a comment below. That's what I have for you today. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you getting to this point in the video. I appreciate the good vibes. I hope you are ready for a very exciting week of trading. I'll see you in the live show Monday to Friday, 9 to 11. I hope you stop by. Other than that, thank you. I'll catch you in the next one.